Okay. Okay, good. Great. Alrighty. I guess it's 12:30, so it is time to start. I do not know what that annoying high-pitched sound is. Hopefully it's not just inside my head. I just went to the doctor today and he said I was fine. But hopefully that doesn't last the whole semester. Okay, so welcome. This is so obviously, and hopefully you're all here for Sociology 100, or you're in the wrong place, or I am. But I'm pretty confident I am in the right place. All right, so obviously this is Introduction to Sociology. Okay, so a couple of things. I'm going to talk about the course really quickly, and because we're only meeting twice a week, usually on the first day I don't go into a lot of content. Because we're only meeting twice a week, we're going to start in with some basics today. Now, the first thing I need to cover before I tell you who I am is to introduce you to my friend Slido. You may have seen this before. There's a few people on campus using it, but basically what Slido is it is a tool. I can do a bunch of different things on it. For this class, I mostly use it for Q&A, right? Because there's so many people in the course, and what I found is people tend just to not ask questions if you have to raise your hand and speak, or because I am, enthusiastic, I get on a a pace and I'm talking about something and I forget to look up and I don't notice people's questions. So with this tool, basically you go to slido.com and you enter that number, or you scan this QR code, and what it will give you is a kind of a Q&A page, and you can ask questions on there if you have any, right? And this will be in every kind of module we go through in the course. It'll have a different Slido, but I'll put the numbers up kind of at the beginning of every class so people can join in. Okay, so, and I mean, if in a couple of slides, I have a Q&A. And see, you can see already people are putting stuff in. You know, it doesn't get cold in the winter. Sadly, yes. Hey, hey, and hi. Okay, so that's how it works. All right. So, my name is Jeff Broussard. I am a professor, or an associate professor in the Department of Sociology. And there is an odd chance that I am not the person you were expecting to see today. Because on December 23rd, I had submitted my grades to the department and I was kind of lounging about thinking, I would relax for a couple of weeks when I got an emergency phone call from the chair of the department. And my immediate thought was, oops, what did I do wrong? But as it turns out, I did nothing wrong, but the person who was scheduled to teach this class, I forget his name, basically decided at the very last minute, no, I'm not interested, I quit. So I got a very frantic call from the department being like, would you take on a session of SOC 100? And my first question was, how much extra will you pay me for it? And when they told me the number, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So I am the instructor for the course, but no need to panic. I've taught this course probably a dozen times in the last 10 years. So I'm very well acquainted with SOC 100. When it comes to talking to me, you don't need to use like super formal address. You don't need to be like, oh, Dr. Broussard. I don't care about the doctor part. If I had an MD or a DDS, like I was a dentist or an actual medical doctor, I would make you call me doctor. But since I'm just a sociologist, Jeff is fine, or Professor Broussard, or whatever you want, just as long as it's polite. So that's me. If you want to, and so this will typically come up around the midterms or before. If you're looking to come for an appointment, my office is over at the furthest possible place from this building, over in Torrey, on the first floor in the Center for Criminological Research. It's a little bit hard to find, but if you make an appointment with me, I'll give you some general directions on how to find it. My appointments for this semester are by appointment, only because in my experience, your schedules are all so different that me being like, I have office hours on Mondays from 10 till 10:50 never really particularly works. I end up having to make a bunch of different appointments for people anyway, so let's just say by appointment. And you can reach me here, that's my email address, but if you type in my name, you might also get jrb5@ualberta. They both go to the same inbox, so no worries. You can email me at both of those. Okay, general rule for email. If you have something you need, right? You've tried to make an appointment with me, or you have a pressing question or something, 48 hours, if I haven't answered, forward me the email. And I will then answer. I'll say I'm teaching 5 courses this semester. So I'm a little busy. Don't worry, I've done it before. I can totally handle it. I'm fine. My doctor said I'm in good health and my blood pressure is under control, so everything's great. So just bear with me a little bit if I'm slow on answering email. I think email inherently gives me ADHD because I go into my inbox and immediately I lose 2 hours. It's just like I meant to answer your email, but there were 6 other emails that I needed to answer before, and 3 hours go by, and it's like lost time, like I've been abducted by aliens or something. So just bear with me, and again, if I haven't answered you in 48 hours, please forward that email to me and I'll get to you. The other thing that's really important, again, I'm teaching 5 courses. Please, 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 in the subject line of your email, give me the course number. Because inevitably you ask me a question like, hey, what's going to be on the exam? And I'm like, I have to email you back and be like, which of my 5 courses are you in? And we both waste a lot of time. So if you just include the course number, I will get back to you much quicker. So please, SOS 100. It's easy to remember. It should be fine. So that's kind of some basics there. God, that sound is really annoying. Okay. All right, so a slight change from what the other instructor had, and this was among my conditions, is I'm not using the textbook that that person had ordered. So if you haven't bought the textbook from the bookstore, don't, because it's the wrong textbook for this section. What I'll be using is this one, which is Cengage's Sociology Compass for a New World, 8th edition. Now, if you happen to find a 6th edition somewhere, or a 7th edition, both of those are fine. You can use those as well. No big deal. They've done some updates in the 8th edition, but if you use an older edition, no big deal. Okay, so that's the textbook. I will put up a link to Cengage's site. I think they sell it online as an ebook for like $76. It's kind of on the more reasonable side. But with that said, I always have my textbooks as optional. And why I say this is, and I know the fear, this is the fear that comes, right, when someone has a textbook. I always think of the textbook as a supplement for a course, right? The main course is me talking to you, right? If the main part of the course was just you sitting at home reading the textbook, why did we book a space, right? The main part of the course is me kind of lecturing, giving you some concepts, and answering your questions rather than you going home and reading the textbook. And what I will say is, because this is always the question, it's almost certainly in the chat, maybe, is anything from the textbook that you didn't talk about in class going to be tested on the exams, right? So when you get the textbook and you're like, there's that box, 1.1, sociology at the movies. Are you going to be asking us a question about Fight Club or something like that? And the answer to that question is emphatically no. If I didn't teach it in class, it will not be on the exam, right? So that's why I say the textbook is optional. If you find textbooks useful, right? If they are a good way for you to learn and you love textbooks, you just want to go out and spend $100 on a textbook that you might use again, but probably will end up being, just another thing on your bookshelf, or something, a piece of digital, digital information that you have access to, absolutely go ahead and buy it. But everything you need to do the exams, to pass the course and all that will be contained in the lectures. Okay, no questions. No one asked a question. Okay, good. Okay, so for this class, it's pretty straightforward, right? This is an intro class. So in terms of workload, I don't think it's anything too extreme. It's the lectures and 3 exams. Now the exams are February 4th, March 6th, and I don't know. I think they have a tentative date in some kind of giant table that you can look up, but that's almost guaranteed to change because the registrar's office moves stuff around on us. So as soon as I know the final exam date, I will let you know what it is. But our first midterms are, a little bit less than a month away. And then, at the beginning of March. Now, those midterms are written in class, right? So obviously that makes sense. But we will be using Canvas to write it, right? So, by the way, the course page is not on eClass, it's on Canvas. So they're very straightforward. Do I have that on the next slide? I do. 50 multiple choice questions, right? You'll get the full, 80 minutes, so nothing too extreme. 50 multiple choice questions on Canvas. You come to class, I give you a password to access the exam. You do the exam in class, and then off you go, right? And they're kind of spread out through the course, roughly at every third. The other thing, right, the exams are non-cumulative. So once we get through the first part of the course, we get to the first midterm, leave that stuff behind, don't worry about it, and we'll move on with the rest of the course. And I keep forgetting to switch this to Canvas because I've fully made the transition to Canvas now. Okay, so I want you to do as well in this course as you want to do, right? I am not of the mindset that I want to be, adversarial towards you or anything like that. I'm here, I hope you, for whatever your reason for taking the course, whether it is that you're really interested in sociology or it's an arts option that happened to fit your schedule and the building was sort of close to your other classes, so it kind of worked out, right? I don't imagine that all of you are super passionate about sociology like I am. Maybe I can get you there, maybe I can't, but I want you to do as well in this course as you want to do. A very specific reason for phrasing it that way, right? Because there are some people that are like, I must get an A to feel like I did well in this course. And if that's you, I want to help you get there, right? So I will do whatever I can, with kind of reasonably to help you get that A. If you're one of those students that's like, C's get degrees, C is for cookie and that's good enough for me and I don't really care about this class, I want to help you get that C. I'm happy with that. If you're happy with a C, I'm happy with helping you get a C, right? Or anything in between, right? And I don't imagine there's too many people that want to get an F, but if you want an F, I don't think I need to help you with that. Just never show up and don't write the exams and you'll be fine. But I do want you to succeed, right? I want you to enjoy the class for what it is, right? For whatever your reason is for being here. Again, whether it's you're super passionate about the topic or it fit your schedule or anything in between, I just want you to have as much fun as possible. And that's kind of the goal. Okay, everything, like all the slides are going to be posted on Canvas. I try to post them in PDF and PowerPoint format so you can use whatever format you want. And I try to keep them updated. There's a few things new in the textbook, so I'm updating a few of them. So I haven't put up the whole course just yet. Often I have the full course up on the first day, but I'm just kind of working through the changes. I thought I had till spring until I was teaching this course again, but now I kind of need to update it. And I asked if they could sell me the 7th edition of the textbook, and they said no. So I'm updating a few little things where they've made some changes. Okay. Any questions? No questions. Usually people are much more questiony than this. That's okay. Okay. So what are we here for, right? Obviously, this is an introduction to sociology as a topic and a discipline, right? So what are we going to do in the course? Well, we're going to kind of start off looking at some of the basic concepts and theories, in sociology. And sometimes I have a lot of friends who are philosophers, and they joke that SOC 100 is the Marx, Durkheim, Weber course, which unfortunately in some ways is true. We're going to talk about a lot of the kind of foundational ideas of sociology and how the different major schools of sociology interpret a bunch of different subjects. So we're going to start off, like the first chunk of the course is all concepts and theories. We're going to spend a good long time kind of digging into the main concepts and theories in the course, right? So we're going to talk a lot about, Emil Durkheim, Max Weber, and Karl Marx, and then a few other disciplines. And then once we get through that, we're going to go through some topics, looking at how sociology interprets different facets of human life, whether they are processes like socialization or institutions like family, education, and religion. All right, so first section, and hopefully, this is what's covered on the first midterm. We're going to start off with what is sociology, and we're going to talk about concepts. Well, I guess we're going to talk about the history of sociology a bit, the concepts, and the theories. We're going to talk very briefly. I'm talking like maybe an hour, maybe one whole lecture on how sociologists do research, right? And so we're going to talk about a little bit of process, just so you know what sociology looks like. One of my other courses this term and something else I've taught is Introduction to Social Methods, right, or social research methods. So I can't, though it's maybe not the most exciting, I think it's important to know how sociologists tend to do their research. And then, we'll talk about culture. What is culture? How do sociologists interpret culture? And all of that fun stuff. And then our big process, how do people become people, right, according to sociology. We'll talk about socialization. Almost inevitably, I end up off schedule, and this one gets bumped to the second midterm, but we'll do our best. All right, the second part of the course, we'll talk about some, I think, more grounded and more interesting well, not more interesting, but more grounded topics, things that are a little easier and less kind of conceptual and theoretical. We'll talk about deviance and crime, what that looks like, and a big part of the Department of Sociology at U of A is the criminology kind of subgroup, right? We do a lot of criminological research, and I myself am based out of the CCR, Center for Criminological Research. There's lots of interesting stuff, and you know, if you want after this, you can go on and take, you know, 225, SOC 225, which is deviance and crime. So we'll talk about globalization. We'll talk about, you know, how the world has changed as it's globalized, and then a bit about race and ethnicity. And in the last part of the course, we'll talk about some kind of core social institutions. We'll talk about families. We'll talk about religion, and I'll apologize in advance. I'm you know, at heart a sociologist of religion, and so I get really excited about that part of the course. We'll talk a lot about some of the basic theories of religion and some fun stuff. We'll talk about education, and then we'll hopefully end off with mass media and communication, talking about the effects of things like social media. All right, so generally speaking, again, I want you to do well. So if something's not working for you, right? If I'm talking too fast or whatever, just let me know. I'm generally pretty flexible. I try to accommodate students as much as is kind of reasonable. And sometimes I'm doing stuff that isn't, you know, that you hate and you'd like me to stop. And I will try to do that. If it's don't doodle on the slides and write on the slides, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I just love doing it. So that one I won't be able to accommodate, but anything else, you know, do feel free to, you know, if you need the text to be bigger, for example, right? You're like, the text on your slides is too small. Could you bump them up a bit? Absolutely, happy to do that. You know, if you want me to hyperlink the videos so you can watch them elsewhere, I'm happy to do that as well. Just let me know. If there's something that's bugging you, I'll try to fix it. If you're going to ask, can you just give us all an A so we don't have to show up to this class for the rest of the semester? I also can't do that. I apologize. The department would fire me. But aside from that, it's all good. Okay. In terms of the lectures, the style is kind of, generally speaking, you know, because I know people are probably coming from all over campus, and ECA is sort of one of the far-flung ends of the campus. I'll generally kind of start the class. I myself am coming from education, so I might be just barely on time, but I generally start the class with a little bit of review, you know, just for 4 or 5 minutes while people are getting, you know, settled into their chairs, you know, just kind of reviewing what we talked about last time. Then, you know, kind of the new material for the day, and then I give at the end like a quick wrap up of what's, you know, what's next, what we're going to talk about next time, and just kind of summarize it. So it's a pretty, I think, straightforward lecture style. Oh, one other thing I should say. I probably don't need to write this. I post all, so I'm recording my portion of all of these lectures, right? So I have my little lavalier mic on, and basically I am streaming this as we speak on YouTube. So basically, and the link for that is on the Canvas page, right? It's a recorded lecture playlist. You can go, if you're not here for some reason on one day, right, like you get sick and you don't want to get everyone else sick, you know, you can go to that link, click on the YouTube channel, click on the live tab, and the lecture at the lecture time will be there if you want to participate. You can even use the Slido to ask questions in real time. And the lectures will all be posted there afterwards, so you can watch them if you missed a class, right? If it's February and it's -400 and you decide, you know what, driving to campus today is just not worth it, you don't have to miss the content. You can live stream it or you can watch it after. And I leave those up all semester. I'm occasionally a little slow at getting them onto that playlist just because I forget. So just be patient with me. But all of those videos are there on that YouTube channel. and you can, click on the live tab and you can see, well, every class I teach is on there. But you can find them, and eventually they'll find their way into that live, or into that YouTube playlist. Okay. Will I upload the doodled slides after class? No, you'll have to watch the videos to get my doodles, because I tend to clear them off when I am done. And mostly, part of the doodling is sometimes I highlight stuff that I think is important, sometimes I write extra words, and I am a chronic fast talker, so sometimes me writing on the slides actually helps me to slow down a little bit and talk at a more human pace. What would I say the historical average is for this class? So this class, I would say, is typically on the mid to high level of a B, right? So now, that said, there's a lot, because it's a big class, right? We're 250 people in the class, and so there's going to be people down in the C, D, F range, not a ton, hopefully, and there's going to be people up in the A plus range. So there's a lot of stuff. Okay, let me clear that off. But yeah, I'd say somewhere around a B, kind of a mid to a high B, typically. Okay, where do you find the readings? So they're in the textbook. I will post a link so you can buy it if you want from Cengage. It's a really nice textbook. I don't only say that because one of the authors is the chair of the department. That's not why I use the textbook. I think it's actually the best one. Despite Oxford repeatedly trying to, convince me to use their textbooks, I really like this one. Okay. Where do you find the readings? Okay, do I post past midterms or finals for practice? Okay, so I don't post like past ones, but what I will do is a couple of things, right? So I kind of reserve a part of the class before each midterm. That's a really great question. Thank you for it. So like usually I do a little bit of review, and then I'll do like in class, I'll do a little bit of, I use Kahoot, and we do a quick Kahoot in class with some practice questions. I know I'm going to take you back to high school or junior high, and we'll do a quick Kahoot. But I also post a kind of practice test bank, right? So basically I will post a practice quiz with a sampling of questions that are similar to the ones that'll be on each of the midterms and the final, right? So basically you'll have lots of practice material to test your knowledge. Usually I put about 40 to 50 questions in the practice test bank for you to kind of run through and kind of see where you're at in terms of all of that stuff. So I will make sure I post that. Again, I have to, because I'm moving from eClass to Canvas for this class, this term, I have to rebuild all of that stuff because the transition didn't quite go as smoothly as I'd hoped. So I have to rebuild the question banks. Thankfully, Cengage has amazing tools for this. So that's a good one. Okay. Okay, all right, so this class has no homework or projects to do. If you mess up really bad on one of the midterms, can you defer the grade? No, unfortunately, it's pretty much what you get is what you get. But honestly, she didn't like that answer. No, I'm kidding. It's not that bad, right? It's SOS 100, it's, ask Reddit, is SOS 100 hard? It's not. If you kind of keep up with the material, you should be able to do fine. And I'll give you so much prep and front loading that if you're here and paying attention, you should do great. Unfortunately, there is no option to do assignments to bring your mark back up because I don't have a TA. There's 250 of you. Even like 15% of you submitted an extra assignment, I wouldn't make it to the end of the semester. It's so much work to mark extra stuff. So unfortunately, no. But I sympathize. And usually, come talk to me and we'll figure out how to get your markup on the subsequent ones. It's usually not that bad. I'll put it that way. Okay, is the final non-cumulative? Yes. So the final will just be whatever is covered from, the first class after midterm 2 to the end, right? So it's really not an overwhelming amount of material. We're all saving your questions for the very end. I love it. Okay, I answered this question. So the Slido code is going to stay the same within each of the modules, right? So like this is course introduction. It has one Slido. When I transition over to, what's the next one? Concepts and theories, that one has its own unique code, right? And so basically, unfortunately, Slido doesn't make it easy to carry codes over from one PowerPoint to another, but I kind of lump the whole concepts and theories all into one giant PowerPoint, and we'll just keep working through it. That one will stay until we're basically done with that and we move to how sociologists do research. So like if your question didn't get answered at the end of, say, today's class, it should still be there the next day and I can come back to it. Okay. Okay. All right, I think I answered both of these. My hair care routine is, suck it, I use bar soap. When you're spending half your life's fortune on hair care products, I don't have that problem. And I just shave it every week or so. So it's the easiest hair care routine. I also don't have to pay for haircuts. So, it's actually kind of the best. Except in the summer where it burns like crazy. But other than that, it's great. Okay. Do I sympathize enough to give better grades if you make an office hours appointment? I mean, I've been known to sometimes be argued into changing a grade, like if a question's a bad one, and you come and you don't think the question was fair and you don't think the answer's right, to rekey the question, right? And so sometimes grades will go up, except I don't just do it for you, I do it for everybody in the class, right? So, I sympathize, but you have to make a case. And honestly, like, if the case is good enough, if it's ridiculous, then no. If you make a good enough case, yeah, sometimes there are bad questions that sneak onto the exam. So, I'll leave it at that. Is the class curved? So no, the class is not curved. This is a, either that or see an optometrist. I will note we aren't in kindergarten. My 5-year-old is in kindergarten, but not you. So yeah, we're not curved, we're not scaled. The other thing is I don't round the grades at the end of the term. Like the Department of Sociology has stuck its kind of heel down on that, and it's like, don't round your grades anymore. So if you're at, and if you look at the grade scale for the course, which is on the syllabus, right? If you're at like a 90 or 89.7, that's a B plus, or sorry, an A minus. You have to get all the way to 90 to get an A, unfortunately. And that's just, they're trying to fight grade inflation. That's the recent push from Faculty of Arts. So, all righty. Haha, laughy, laughy. Okay, I can't see at the back. I got LASIK because I was tired of wearing glasses. Like, honestly, during COVID, and it was in this building too, every time I came in from outside, I would fog up and I couldn't find the classroom. So I was like, okay, it's time for LASIK. All right, can we do an interpretive dance to pass? Yes, but my grading on interpretive dance is extremely subjective. Better be good. No, I'm kidding. Obviously can't do interpretive dance. Okay, I get it. You want me to answer the textbook question. Okay, how much do I recommend having the textbook? Honestly, like, I'm 50-50 on this because I was one of those students who just went to lectures and hated reading the textbook. If it helps you, right? And so I leave it up to you, right? If you want to spend the money, if it helps you to have the textbook, then get it. If you don't find textbooks helpful and you suspect that your SOC 100 textbook is going to become, a point of emotional contention where you're like angry that you spent $76 on it, so you couldn't buy 3 oranges to keep your vitamin C level up and stop you from getting scurvy. Hey, I know food prices are high. Then don't buy the textbook, right? I really honestly leave it up to you, right? I won't test you on anything that's in the textbook that I don't talk about. But some people learn really well by reading the material. So I honestly leave it up to you. But I 100% promise you, if I accidentally slide in a question where it was like something from the textbook that I didn't talk about, I will absolutely fix that and give everybody who got that question a free grade on that question. Because I really don't believe in, I know people get traumatized by this in undergrad, where it's like that one, that thing, what was word 54 on page 562 of the textbook, or something really, really random. I really don't believe in doing that. I don't think it's fair. Like, honestly, if I think it's important enough to talk about, then it should be tested. If I don't believe in testing it. So I leave you to interpret that, but generally speaking, I've had lots of people take the course and say they didn't buy the textbook who did well, like not just fine, but they did well in the class because I try to make it super fair. Okay. After exams. Do you mean, can you leave early from the exam if you're done? Like, for getting here, I would suggest, right, we only have 2 exams, so maybe leave your other class early on those 2 days, but you don't have, once you're done, you don't have to stay, right? So for those 2 days, I mean, if you come in late, right, I'm not gonna be like, I'm sorry, you're 30 seconds late, you've missed the exam and failed at life, goodbye. So like, I'll still let you write the exam, that's no problem. But if you're like, can I leave after test? As soon as you're done, get out of here. So yeah, like honestly, even if you're like 5 minutes late, I've never been like, you can't write the exam. So don't worry about that. I know it's far. I had no choice. This was just the room they gave me. Is the final exam on Canvas too? It is on Canvas, absolutely. Everything is on Canvas. The nice thing about that, by the way, is as soon as you hit submit, it calculates your grade, you get your grade instantly. And then you can write me a panicked email 5 seconds after you leave the class. Or not, if you did great. Okay. Interesting. Classic trilogy or new trilogy? Like, are we talking JJ Palpatine, or is it the same? I don't know. Now I'm on the fence. I hate the JJ trilogy, but aside from that. Are there any films or needed videos to watch in class? Yeah, so everything is gonna be embedded in the PowerPoint, right? So there's no like extra movies to watch after hours. Everything that is in the course is contained in the PowerPoints. So yeah, everything you need is there. You have no, there's no extras that you have to worry about. Okay. Wow. I have okay, so that's an interesting question. There are no TAs for the course. So we have what I call the Goon Squad. So because there are not enough TAs in the department to individuate all the exams right into Proctor, I will request what's called the Proctor Patrol by the department, but I like to call them the Goon Squad. And inevitably, they're all like, 5'4" women who are in sociology. So they are extremely intimidating. Yeah, so I have to fill that form out today. Thank you for reminding me. And there'll be a couple of people, maybe 2 or 3, walking around the room, kind of staring at you awkwardly. I don't want to take that comment. Okay. At some point, we'll settle down and people will relax with the comments. Oh, that's a great question. Actually, you can put your name in on, let's put No Way Highway. Yeah, okay, so I think I answered this. This is fun. Okay, Carson. Where's Carson's question? Okay, we got basketball and baseball players. U of A has a baseball team? I'm shocked. Not appalled, but shocked. Okay, so yeah, if you're a student athlete and there's some kind of conflict between the exams, of course, we can make accommodations for you. That's no problem. You just have to come and talk to me. Usually there's a letter, okay. Yeah. So usually there's a letter from your coach or something, but just come talk to me and we can always make alternate arrangements because yeah, sometimes you have like games or championships or something on the same weekend. It's gonna be really awkward when we're annexed by America and you all have to compete in the NCAA though. That's gonna be tough. Okay. Little Trump humor for you. All right, are you allowed to do Canvas on phones if the laptop finally breaks down? Absolutely. iPads, phones, laptops, any device that you want, you can basically write the exam on. It's a little awkward on phones because it's a little bit cramped, but it's definitely doable, and I give you lots of options. We'll talk about it later. The other thing I should say about the exams, I know sometimes like the idea of writing online. Can you write? I made this joke yesterday in a different class. Were you in my other class? That can't be true. Yeah. Interesting. As long as they're not disruptive, I guess. Like give them an iPad and some headphones and bring them along, right? I've brought my kids to lectures before. It's all good. That is a word that my 12-year-old uses. Way to make me feel old. If your kid is sick, don't infect us. Yeah, I mean, honestly, too, like if your kid is sick and you need to defer the exam, we can definitely make it work. Oh, God. Okay. Guys, don't make me shut down the comments. Okay, can you write it on your Nintendo 3DS? I don't think the browser for the 3DS is technically Chrome compatible, so I'm going to go with no. But I honestly, like, you think you're funny. I made that joke yesterday in a different class, so I'm way funnier than you. If your kid's sick, yeah, like I said, if your kid is sick and you need, like, to defer, you can send me an email. I'm actually pretty flexible when it comes to this stuff. And because they're written online, it's pretty easy for me to set up online proctoring in limited cases to set it up. Can you write the exam for me if you're scared? No. You'll be fine, trust me. Do you get extra marks if you attend both? Do you get extra? What other class? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. I think I've answered this. Cats. I think we're having a breakdown now. Are there such things as bad or forbidden questions or things that shouldn't be asked? Yes, but I can't tell you what those things are, obviously. There is the forbidden sociology question. But unfortunately, you have to have a PhD in order to learn what that question is. Okay, I think I've answered everything. I don't know what this series of emojis is supposed to mean. Do we have a lockdown browser on the exams? Okay, so no. And the reason for no is because the tools that U of A has at its disposal are terrible. ExamLog doesn't work half the time on Macs. It will cause your Mac to have a complete meltdown and break. So, we're just gonna supervise you super carefully. That said, like all sorts of things are true. Even if you were to search for things, it's gonna be really, really hard if you don't know the concepts to figure out what the questions are asking. You'll see why. A lot of them are vignette questions. So you kind of have to know the material. And there's a massive test bank, right? So I probably have for each unit somewhere between 60 and 70 questions. So even you sitting next to someone else, you're not going to get the same questions. Okay. I thought I cleared you. Go away. Okay. You get annexed by America, will I make you learn their national anthem? You don't know the American national anthem already? Come on. Now, see, now you're just sucking up. Okay. And since I don't know who you are, it seems wasted. Okay, if you're doing research, No idea what that means. Okay, if you recently enrolled in the class a day or two, yes, that's more of an IT question. Okay. Will you have multiple practice tests and questions released, and when? As soon as I'm able to, and yes. Like I said, I'm rebuilding some aspects of the course. What other courses? See, guys, you're just being mean now. Yes, my son, in fact, is Caillou. There you go. Okay. I thought I was going to actually get some lecturing done today, but apparently we're just going to goof off. That's okay, too. What? I don't know what this means, and I'm not going to ponder it too deeply. For the Canvas question, yeah, I think that's right. It's a bad system, but at least it works poorly. Okay. Will midterms be mostly terms and theories? Yes. Do I know Charlie? Okay. Have none. Don't know what that is. Don't mistake me for someone who's hip and cool. That would be my daughter. What is the average difficulty of the exams? What is the average of how much time you spent paying attention to lectures and studying? They are, inversely proportional. The less time you have spent learning the concepts, the harder the exam is. The more time, I would say, it's pretty straightforward. Yes, we're going to clear this up. What other classes, this is the last question I'll answer on this one, then we're going to jump to concepts and theories. What other classes do I teach? So I am teaching 377, Sociology of Youth. 315, the most exciting class of all, Intro to Social Methods. It is not the most exciting, no one wants to take it. What else do I teach? This one, 366, which is a class for only, so SOC 366, People in Industry, a class you can only take if you are an engineer. And I teach CHRTC 241, Catholicism and Pop Culture. And that one's a good time. All right, those are my classes. I think I got them all. Youth, Methods, 100, Catholicism and Pop Culture. There's a fifth one. Oh, People in Industry. Yeah, I got that one, but you can't take that one. All right, what study approach do I recommend? Study cleverly and use your time efficiently. This is a hard question, and I joke a little bit about it. Simply because everybody's a little bit different, right? So there's no like universal thing, but I think if you review the slides, you've made good notes as we go through, you review your notes, you do the practice exams, you're gonna be just fine. All right, I'm gonna go teach this. What's my least favorite class to teach? Ooh, that changes sometimes, but at the moment it's Intro to Social Methods, only because I finished it in December and I'm teaching it again, and honestly, it's not that much fun. Okay. I'll now discard my doodles and open up. I seem to have broken the PowerPoint, but I will get this up in half a second. I will do some concepts and theories until 1 or 2-ish, and then go from there. All righty. All right, so hopefully we can calm I don't mind having fun, but let's not let the Slido turn into just random comments, or it does get a little bit useless. Slido for the new module, like I said, they don't carry over. So our new module, this is the Slido. I'll give you half a second to do that, and then we'll get started on the beginning of the course. Okay. All right, so what are we talking about? When we talk about sociology, right? What the heck is this discipline? Okay, so according to the main body of sociology, which is the American Sociological Association, sociology is the study of societies, right? There you go. Nice and simple. Maybe I'll take out my highlighter for this one. The study of societies, right? Oh, I used the eraser. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. The study of society, right? So, It is the study of society involving the study of social lives of people, groups, and societies, the study of behavior, our behavior as social beings, covering anything from the analysis of short, contacts between people, right? Sociologists are interested in how you interact with the barista at Starbucks, or, in this economy, the person working at Tim Hortons, because that's the best you can do for coffee. And everything from like your most intimate relationships to large scale global organizations, right? So sociology, everything in society, every interaction that people have, every institution, that is kind of what it covers. And at its best, what it hopes for is that it is a science, right? It is supposed to be a science of social interactions. It is, a social science. Some of the early promoters, guys like Durkheim, Marx, well, not Marx, but Durkheim and Weber, wanted it to be, the queen of the sciences, right? Basically the highest science because it was the one that connected all the other disciplines. And when we talk about sociology, we have a lot of things that we use as sociologists. It's very interdisciplinary. We use insights and concepts from things like economics, from history, from psychology, if we have to. No, I'm kidding. Psychology is great. I'm not traumatized at all by taking Psychology 105 and having the professor talk to us every single lecture about her sexual escapades. I think she was a nymphomaniac, and I've never respected psychology ever since, and I never will. I was in there with a couple of friends of mine, and we still occasionally relive this trauma. But we take insights from psychology, if there are any actually, and any other discipline that kind of produces knowledge that we find useful, the natural sciences as well. So it is supposed to be a discipline that brings in knowledge from all over the place to help us better understand society. Okay, so why do you need sociology? Like, what can sociology do, right? What is the purpose of sociology as a discipline? Well, I mean, at its best, and it's not always at its best, but certainly, there are some great sociologists and there's some great insights from it. Hopefully, it's a liberating activity, right? One that points out things like injustices, social problems, the way people's lives are affected by big social structures, and potentially by illuminating those things, we can maybe think about what potential solutions might be, in a country where we have a working government, so not this one. It can teach you who you are and how you came to be who you are, right? So one of the really interesting things that you can learn in sociology, and I always think about this in terms of like sociology of religion, is how you come to have the beliefs, the values, the understandings that you do, how you construct your self-identity, and it can point to what you can become, right? How you can either transcend those things or kind of embrace them. And hopefully, it can help us create a better future, or the best possible future, by showing us where there are social problems. And it's supposed to be, right, a systemic and scientific study of human behavior in that social context. All right, I need my pen back. Okay, so this is, I think, very importantly, the main goal for sociologists. And this is to explain how particular troubles for individuals, right? So personal troubles, right? You have a problem, right? You're having, trouble in school. You're having a family breakdown. You can't afford food because you live in Canada. Whatever it happens to be, right? Your economic problems, your social problems, all of these things, how they are linked to broader social structures, right? In a lot of ways, sociology is about shifting the debate, in some senses, away from the individual and putting everything that happens to the individual on them, right? And looking, at least in part, at how bigger social structures actually affect them, right? So not everything, and here you can think of things like poverty. What are the social structures, economic systems that contribute to poverty and inequality and things like that, right? to things like sexism. What are these structures that might have to do with sexism or racism or all of these things that might not be linked necessarily to individual choices, but cause problems for people. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And what are social structures? Well, you can think of social structures, the definition here is relatively stable patterns of social relations, but any kind of social structure or institution that human beings create are essentially social structures, right? So everything from, friendships are social structures. Commercial relationships, like you and your relationship with your bank is a social structure. Probably not a very warm one, but it is a social structure nonetheless. Your relationship with Starbucks or Tim Hortons or your favorite brands, these are all social structures. Your family relationships, your relationships with any communities that you belong to, right? Your D&D society or your religious group, these are all social structures that you are a part of and that exist. And they exist in a couple of different levels. Okay, so hang on, let me just see if there's any questions. Intriguing. Oh, I think these might be from last year. I forgot to clear the Slido. I'm going to clear these. Okay, yes, hang on. That was last year. My microphone was dying. I know, because I had to buy a new microphone. Okay, if you had a question there, please retype it. All right, so sometimes I forget to clear the old questions out of the Slido. So, social structures, we can break them into basically 3 major levels, right? So, microstructures. These are patterns of intimate social relationships formed during face-to-face interaction, right? And they can go from the very passing, right? You go to Starbucks and you interact with the barista, right? You smile at them, they smile at you, they misspell your name. I think it might be on purpose. They hand you a drink, you leave, right? That is technically a microstructure. Your friendships are microstructures as well. Your relationship, say with me as an individual rather than me as the representative of this institution, a microstructure. Your family relationships are microstructures. Your relationship with your mom, your dad, brothers, sisters, if you have a Chihuahua, then your Chihuahua. Technically not a social interaction on the human level, but we'll leave it there, right? So these are your most intimate relationships, your friendships, and all of that jazz. Okay, macrostructures. So what are macrostructures? They are those bigger patterns of relationships outside and above your intimate acquaintances, right? So your interaction, again, with big institutions, right? So you're really, like, I don't know, if you have a Starbucks card where you load points or money on and they give you stars, which are never as valuable as I wish they were, that technically is a sort of relationship with a macrostructure because you have a relationship with a company, right? Your relationship with the university as an entity, this is a relationship with a macrostructure, right? Any kind of big institution, religion, the university, banks, the economy, your employer, right? These are all macrostructures that you are relating to. Now, within those macrostructures, right, you probably have kind of microstructure interactions with people. You have relationships with, professors, teachers, friends, within the university, within your religious community, and all of those things. But those big institutions are, even at, say, at a bank, you have a relationship with your financial advisor. All of those relationships are microstructures nested within these bigger macrostructures, right? So anything above, your intimate, I don't want to say intimate in too intimate a way, right? Face-to-face personal interactions with actual human beings. Those are kind of microstructures, right? If you know someone's name, that is a microstructure within these bigger macrostructures. But these large institutions that you interact with on a daily basis are all macrostructures, right? Even as you drive around the city, right, you're interacting with the macrostructure of the city of Edmonton in some ways. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. If it doesn't, ask questions. And global structures, right? Global structures are patterns of relations basically above the national level. So you can think of things like the UN, NATO, BRICS, You know, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, you know, relationships between countries. So like, used to be called NAFTA, now it's, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, now it's USMCA, I think. These are all kind of global structures that, you know, you're probably not going to interact with on a daily basis, but they're things that can profoundly impact your life. I guess the other one that you might want to think of over here is the EU, right? Things like the EU would be in these kinds of categories. Okay. All right. Is being strangers a type of social structure? Okay, that's a hard question, actually. I mean, I think being strangers, right, you don't have a relationship necessarily. Potentially, you know, you might interact with strangers inside of macro structures, but people who don't have any kind of relationship because they're strangers, I wouldn't say is a social structure. You're probably contained within bigger structures. Would the federal government be a macro structure? Yes, the federal government would in fact be a macro structure, right? So when you go to the passport office to get your passport and you're interacting with the federal government, you're in fact interacting with a macro structure. So, I mean, if you're dealing, sorry, I'll go in turn. Is like infrastructure a macro structure? Let's say that something like, yes, let's say something like the infrastructure in Edmonton, right? You're technically, I think, dealing there with the infrastructure of the city as a bureaucratic institution that maintains all of these things, that has roads that you move down. I'll try to enunciate better. You know, where there's police that, at least in theory, you know, manage things like speeding and crime and all of those things. Those are all within that macro structure of, say, the city of Edmonton. And you can have here like a couple of macro structures overlapping, right? The city and the police are both macro structures, but they're related to each other, sort of like, you know, a Venn diagram. That's an interesting question. I mean, in a sense, like something might be both, right? So say something like Starbucks, right? I don't know why I'm stuck on Starbucks today. I was going to the doctor and I was worried about my blood pressure, so I didn't get my morning coffee. So maybe I'm just like stuck on Starbucks because I desperately need a hit. I don't know. But Starbucks, right? When you go into that Starbucks, you know, that you get your beverages at, you're dealing with a macro structure at the sort of local level. But yeah, Starbucks in a sense also does exist as a global structure, in the sense of, you know, they buy beans from all over the world. They have locations, you know, in different countries. So they're also kind of a global structure in some ways, right? So some institutions actually, and that's why it's an interesting question, can kind of be both, right? When you're dealing with that individual branch, you're dealing with a macro structure that's kind of nested within this global structure of Starbucks. What's my order? I mean, should I be embarrassed to say I'm really a big fan of matcha lattes, but half sweet because the full sugar one is revolting. I like my drinks to taste like grass, is what I'm told. Would a microstructure be something teller and a macrostructure be your bank? Yes, you've got it. Absolutely, perfect. Is it a macrostructure when you don't know? Okay, I'm going to clear your jokey question. It's a good joke, but we'll clear that one off. Is a macrostructure when you don't know their name, not face-to-face, but not national? I mean, think of it more as a relationship with an institution, right? Like not the teller, but the bank, right? Not the professor, but the university, right? That the macrostructure is that bigger institutional setting that you're within. Okay. What about interacting with like GoFundMe? Fit into like for the spelling errors are making it hard for me to understand this question. That Mars question was 100% serious. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you write it again then? I thought you were joking. What about interacting with like GoFundMe's fit in like supporting international causes? I don't know. That's a very oddly specific question. I mean, I would think of GoFundMe as a macro structure, right? It might have international links, but I'd have to look at I'd have to look at the actual example to kind of get a better sense. Okay, okay. The main difference between macro and global, how directly you interact. Yeah, I mean, think of it like a macro structure. Yes, you're interacting with it. It tends to exist on a local level. A global structure is interacting with other global kind of actors, right? So, you know, these big global structures, something like, like the UN, right? It's a bunch of countries and it acts on an international level rather than, you know, at a local level in a lot of cases. Are there clear boundaries between global and micro? Yeah, I mean, part of the problem, okay. Okay, I gotta clear that off because I gotta see the question. Yeah, I think, you know, global structures tend to operate outside the realm of the individual, right? They operate on an institutional level across national boundaries and interact a lot with each other and with national kind of macro structures, like Canada as a structure, right? The UN will interact with Canada. Now, sometimes these lines kind of overlap, right? And there are ways that institutions, say like the federal government, can be both at a kind of macro level, but also kind of slip into that global level. So they're not entirely non-overlapping categories. So I know that makes it muddy, but trust me, it's not, once you kind of see them, it makes sense. Okay, can I re-explain macro and global structures? I'll go back in a second, or have I explained it enough? Holy moly, you guys are enthusiastic. At first it was so quiet, no one was asking questions, and now it's amazing. Okay, holy moly. Clear-cut boundaries between the global and, I'm assuming that's the macro, not the micro, because micro is just like face-to-face, right? Macro, they're often going to overlap, right? And there's going to be aspects of, say, a global structure like Starbucks that has macro elements, like Starbucks of Canada and your individual branch, right? Or your bank, which might have investments in, you know, global markets. So in some sense, it's a global structure, but also, you know, has a local branch that you're interacting with. So a lot of these will overlap. Okay. I'll leave that for the Martian sociologist to answer. I think we're still, you know, interstellar structures. Maybe we'll have that one day, but until, you know, we have the Klingons, the Federation, and the Romulans, we won't worry about that for our purposes. Transnational companies be global structures? Yes, but they might have macro elements to them as well, right? Because they like Coca-Cola, will have branch plants and local distribution arms. So they might have that as well. What kind of structure would our class be? I would say like our class, like us here, we're probably talking about microstructures, right? Nested within the larger macro structure of the University of Alberta. Okay, I think I've explained this enough. If not, you know, we'll try again. Clear. Would a city or a community yeah, that's basically right. Okay. How are the interactions of an institution? Scale and type of interaction. How are the interactions in and of itself? I'm not sure what this question means. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to think about it. Is being a global structure dependent on having power to act internationally? Yeah, I mean, basically acting at a global level, right? The power to act internationally, relationships with other kind of transnational players, you know, across borders would make you kind of more of a global structure. What would an example of a global structure exam question look like? It would be something like, what kind of structure is the United Nations, right? Or NATO. It would look something like that. It's going to be super straightforward. Okay, that is way too specific a question. We'll just leave that for the moment. Okay, let's move on. So, trust me, it won't always be like this. Telling jokes will become less amusing. Okay, so sociological imagination. So this is a term that comes from one of the early sociologists, to C. Wright Mills. And this is what, at least at its best, sociology hopes to instill in people, right? Which is so how do we define the sociological imagination? The ability to see the connection between personal troubles and social structures, right? Rather than say, and here you can kind of often think of maybe the bootstraps example, right? So you might have heard, this kind of thing that, people who are poor or unsuccessful, right? What they really need is just to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? The reason for their economic failure is just that they aren't working hard enough. And that would be something that the sociological imagination is meant to sort of break down, right? Rather than saying it's all you and it's all just, the fact that you're poor, the fact that you're not succeeding isn't necessarily just due to your own actions, but might be related to broader, economic, social, political kind of questions, right? It might be that you were born into, a family that was poor, and so you didn't get all of the advantages, right? You didn't get the extra tutoring that helped you get into, the best university program. You didn't have tuition waivers or parents who could pay your tuition, and therefore you weren't able to dedicate yourself to your study because you had to hold down 3 jobs. So the fact that, by the time you hit 40, you're less economically, this person is super economically successful because they had, rich parents that paid for extra tutoring and paid their tuition so they could just focus on their schooling. And they're super successful at 40. And this person, right, who didn't have any of those advantages, didn't get as good of grades because they were working 3 jobs to support themselves, has way less money. That might be more related to those bigger social structures of things like poverty and all of that than their personal gumption, right? And that's what the sociological imagination is supposed to help us see. Not just that, but all sorts of ways that stuff that goes wrong in people's lives, stuff that people find challenging, is related to these bigger social questions. Okay. All right, why don't I say this? We're 10 minutes out from the end. You've been great. We'll come back on, we'll leave it 10 minutes early. We'll come back on Thursday. We'll keep going because we're kind of at a historical inflection point, and we'll start talking about history in a minute. Yes, if you have crossed the border to buy coffee, no, you have not. All right. Okay.